It was supposed to be just another delivery across the desert, unhurried, uncomplicated. I was in the middle of nowhere, literally, between two cities that I don't even know if they appear on the map. The sun had already set and all that was left was that purple sky of the late afternoon, with the air still and dry, as if everything had frozen. That's when I saw the headlights. 2 points of light in the distance, stopped, on the shoulder of a straight and deserted stretch of road. When I got closer, my stomach turned. It was a truck just like mine. Same model, same color, same wear on the headlights. And it was running. Lights on, engine humming softly. But no one was there. I stood a few feet behind, with my hazard lights on. I got out of the truck with my flashlight on and started walking closer. Each step made me more uneasy. The back, the tires, even the mud marks, everything was the same. I started to think that someone might be playing a prank, maybe another trucker with a similar model. But when I got to the driver's door and saw the small crack in the glass, in the same place as mine, I realized that it wasn't just similar. It was my truck. Or rather, it was exactly like mine, but parked there, in the middle of nowhere, as if it were waiting for me. I opened the door. It wasn't locked. I climbed into the cabin. The smell, the worn-out seat on the left side, the flannel on the dashboard. Everything was the same. The radio was tuned to the same frequency, the thermos in the holder, even the old jacket thrown on the passenger seat. But what made me freeze was seeing the bitten sandwich on the dashboard. I remembered exactly how I had left it there, hours before. Same bite mark, same torn wrapping paper. It was as if someone had copied my truck and put it there, waiting for me to find it. Or worse, as if that was the original, and mine was a copy. I left the cab in a panic and went around to check the license plate. It was the same. The numbers, the letters, even the little faded sticker I had put on it months ago. I ran back to my truck, trying to find any difference, any detail that would show I was delirious. But everything matched. And even stranger, my engine was still running, and the dashboard showed the same travel time. Nothing seemed out of place. But now, I couldn't shake the feeling that there were two of me there. And that one of them might not be real. I thought about calling someone, sending a photo, anything. I picked up my cell phone, no signal. No trace of a network. The GPS was frozen, showing only a fixed point, with no road around it. It was as if I were off the map. I looked back at the other truck. It was still there, motionless, engine running, as if waiting for me to do something. And then I noticed the reflection in the rearview mirror of the parked truck. A silhouette. In the driver's seat. But there was no one there. I looked straight ahead and saw nothing, just the empty seat. The reflection showed something that shouldn't be there. Something that wouldn't obey me. I tried to start my truck, and luckily the engine responded. But as I accelerated to get out of there, the other truck's headlights flashed. Once, twice. As if in response. The radio turned on by itself. And instead of music, a distorted recording began to play. It was my voice. Stuttering. Saying the same words I had said hours earlier when answering a phone call. Same intonation, same background noise. As if someone had recorded the whole thing. It made me freeze inside. It was impossible. I started to sweat, even with the cold desert air coming in through the window. By reflex, I looked back at the parked truck. And now it had the door closed. When I first saw it, it was ajar. I didn't hear any knocking, I didn't see any movement. It was just closed. And the interior lights were off. Everything started to get dark faster than it should have. The sky turned an opaque black, without stars, without a moon. And for a second, the road disappeared. The asphalt beneath me seemed to have been swallowed up. Only the two trucks remained, face to face, in the middle of an empty space that no longer looked like a desert. It was as if time had stopped there. As if that place was made just for this moment. I blinked. When I opened my eyes, my truck was a few meters ahead, as if it had moved on its own. The other one was gone. It had disappeared without a trace. I backed up, looked for tire tracks, disturbed dust, anything. Nothing. It was as if it had never existed. But inside my cabin, everything was the same, except for one detail. The sandwich on the dashboard now had 2 bites in it. One from me. And one that I hadn't taken. The teeth marks were different. And the wrapping, more torn than before. And in that moment, I understood that maybe, he was still around. Maybe I had never left. Since then, I have avoided driving at night on deserted stretches. But it is not easy. The road calls. And every now and then, I cross stretches that I am sure I have already passed, but I do not remember how. The radio crackles out of nowhere. The GPS shows roads that do not exist. And sometimes, by reflex, I see another truck next to me, identical, following me for a few seconds before disappearing into the darkness. I have never seen the sandwich again. But I swear that, once, I found the wrapped paper in my jacket pocket. Even torn like that night. I did not put it there. I wonder what would have happened if I had gotten back into the cab of the other truck. If I had taken the wheel. If I had accepted that trade. Because deep down, that's what it felt like, a substitution. An invitation to leave this life, or this reality, and occupy another place. Or maybe, to be occupied. There are nights when I wake up inside the truck, even though I'm sure I went to sleep in the back seat. Sometimes, the radio is playing a recording of mine, but that I never made. And the rearview mirror is always foggy. I asked other truck drivers if they had ever seen anything like it. Some looked away. One said he had stopped to help a truck with the same license plate as his. Another swore he had seen his own truck passing in the opposite lane, empty, with its lights on. These are no coincidences. There is something on the road, especially in the desert, that plays with who we are. That imitates. That observes. And that, when you give it space, it enters. Sometimes I think my copy is still out there. And that one of these days, it will find me again. And next time, maybe it won't leave. So if one day, on an empty highway, you see a truck identical to yours parked on the shoulder of the road, with its engine running, don't stop. Don't pull over. Don't look inside. Because whatever's out there might be waiting for you. It might be you. And it might be ready to trade places. I've never believed in those stories about haunted roads. I always thought they were just the talk of a tired truck driver trying to distract himself. But there's a stretch of Interstate 15, between Baker and Mesquite, that I avoid to this day. And when there's no other way, I speed past it, with the radio on loud and the windows rolled up. The first time I noticed something strange there was one silent morning. Everything was so calm. No wind, no cars on the road, not even the sound of animals. Just the constant roar of the truck. Until I heard it. A muffled sound, coming from below. As if someone was shouting from deep within the asphalt. I thought I was hallucinating. I opened the window and slowed down. The sound became clearer. It wasn't interference with the radio or a problem with the engine. They were screams. Faint, as if they were coming from deep inside. And they had a cadence. It wasn't just one scream, it was as if several voices were calling for help, at different intervals. I pulled the truck over to the shoulder and got out. The air there seemed denser. The road was hot, even in the early hours of the morning. I bent down and put my hand on the asphalt. And that's when I felt it. It was pulsing. Lightly. Like a heart beating slowly. I put my ear to it, not quite believing what I was doing. And I heard it more clearly. Female and male voices, some crying, others screaming in pain. Disjointed words, moans, pleas. It was as if there were people buried alive there. I tried to get up quickly, but my legs gave out. I felt a violent shiver run down my back, as if something had gone through my body at that moment. I stumbled back to the truck, closed the door tightly and started the engine, ready to get out of there. But before I could put it in gear, one last thing made me stop. The dashboard went dark. The interior lights went dark too. Everything went out for about 5 seconds. And in that time, the radio, even though it was unplugged, turned on and let out a dry sound, a loud hiss, followed by a single word, help. It was a child's voice. Clear, as if it were sitting in the passenger seat. I instinctively looked to the side, and for a second, I swear I saw a small figure on the seat. It had no face, just a silhouette. And it disappeared when I blinked. The truck went back to normal right away, as if nothing had happened. But the asphalt was still pulsing. And now, it seemed faster. As if it knew I had heard it. Over the next few days, I tried to forget. I convinced myself it was just fatigue, the desert heat playing tricks on my head. But every time I crossed that stretch of I-15, even during the day, I felt the same discomfort. The asphalt seemed alive. At times, the truck's dashboard would shake, as if something were interfering with the electrical systems. The radio would crackle, the windows would fog up, and always, a whisper would emerge. Sometimes a short sentence, sometimes just a muffled cry. And the strangest thing, every time it was a different voice. As if it wasn't a repeat. As if they were different people. I started researching. I discovered that stretch of road has a history of serious accidents, especially in the 1980s and 1990s. Trucks overturned, cars swallowed by sandstorms, unexplained disappearances. A retired officer even said in an interview that the area should be closed off, but they never explained why. They just said that the ground there was unstable. But how unstable? Because every time I stop there, and I don't know why I still stop, the ground pulsates. I've taken other drivers with me. Some didn't feel a thing. Others vomited when they got out of the cab, saying that the place felt wrong. One time, I brought a recorder. I left it inside the cabin with the microphone pointed at the asphalt while I went to get a coffee. When I came back and listened to the recording, my hands went cold. There were more than 15 minutes of whispered voices. Some were shouting dates. Others were saying names. And one of them was repeating mine. In a slurred tone, as if it knew who I was. I threw the recorder away right away, but the sound wouldn't go away. I started having dreams about the asphalt opening up, about hands trying to get out, about faces glued to the ground, watching me while I slept inside the truck. I've thought about changing my route, changing my life, leaving everything behind. But something pulls me back. Every time. As if that stretch of I-15 had left its mark on me in some way. I've lost count of how many times I've heard different voices asking for help. And the worst part, I've started to recognize them. Voices that I've heard only once, but that keep repeating themselves, as if they were stuck in an eternal cycle. It's as if that stretch of road were a limbo. A place where the screams continue, even after they've ended. And where the asphalt doesn't forget whoever stopped to listen. There was one night in particular that sealed the deal for me. It was raining heavily, but the stretch seemed dry, as if the water avoided that part of the road. I was driving slowly, with my headlights low, when I saw the marks. Like footprints. The marks of bare feet crossing the wet asphalt. I stopped. Against my will, I stopped. I got out with the flashlight and followed the marks for a few meters until they simply disappeared in the middle of the road. And when I turned to go back, the truck was no longer there. I swear. No sign. No noise. Just that heavy, painful silence, and the asphalt pulsing louder than ever. I stood there in the dark for who knows how long. Until I saw the headlights appear again, slowly, as if someone were driving my truck back toward me. But there was no one in the cab. It stopped by itself, with the engine running and the door ajar. I got in, sat down on the seat, and the radio turned on by itself. The voice again. A child's, maybe the same one from the first time. Now you know too. That was all she said. And then, just static. I drove until dawn, without stopping, without thinking, just wanting to get out of there. But no matter how much I drove, it seemed like that stretch of road followed me. Since then, no matter the stretch of I-15, at some point along the way I hear the screams. I've changed trucks, changed routes, even thought about leaving the road. But it's no use. The ground throbs. The screams come. And always from under the tires, as if something down there recognizes me. I've seen the same stretch in dreams, as if I were buried there, trapped under the asphalt, trying to scream too. And what scares me the most is the feeling that, one day, I won't just listen. I'll respond. So if you ever find yourself driving down I-15, where the silence feels too heavy, where the ground feels too hot, don't stop. Don't listen. Because if you listen, if you respond, maybe you'll start screaming too. And maybe no one will be able to get you out of there. Route 22 has always been a quiet road for me. A short stretch between two small rural towns, without much traffic. But a few months ago, something started to change. It all started on a cloudy morning. The ground was still damp from the night before, and the fog covered the road like a thick veil. I was driving slowly, attentively, when I saw some objects on the road. I stopped. They were arrangements, feathers, small bones, old coins, and a bunch of dry twigs woven together, all forming a strange pattern on the asphalt. In the middle, a circle of salt. I thought it was someone joking around or some forgotten ritual, but I drove right past them without thinking twice. The next day, there they were again. In the exact same spot. Exactly the same. Same pattern, same position of the objects. I decided to stop and take a picture, but when I got out to take a closer look, I couldn't see anything in the rearview mirror. The objects were there, but only when I looked straight at them. As if they weren't reflective. I walked around so as not to step on anything, but when I got back into the cabin, I felt like something was stuck to me. A strong smell of wet, almost rotten earth filled the air inside the truck. I thought it was something from the road, dirt maybe. But the smell didn't go away for days, not even with the cabin closed. The third time, the salt circle was even more defined. And I, distracted, went down to check. I accidentally stepped inside it. I didn't even realize it at the time, but after I got back into the truck, the weight on my back appeared. Literally. As if something was resting there, between my shoulders. The sensation stayed for hours. Not pain, but presence. From that day on, everything began to change. The streetlights flickered as I passed. The radio began to pick up voices that didn't belong to any station. Slurred sounds, sometimes laughter, sometimes muffled screams. And, the strangest thing, always when I got close to that point on Route 22. I started paying attention and noticed that the animals avoided that stretch. Not a single bird in the sky. No animals were run over, nothing. It was as if the road there was dead. A heavy silence formed every time I got close. Even the sound of the engine seemed muffled, as if something was sucking the noise. And when I passed the point of the circle, even without looking, I knew it was there. Because I could smell it. The same smell of rotten earth. And in the rearview mirror, every few seconds, I saw a figure standing on the side of the road. It never moved. It never came closer. It just watched. And it seemed to smile. After a few weeks, the figure began to appear even outside of Route 22. I saw it in the reflection of a gas station window, standing behind me. When I turned around, there was no one there. The other day, at a toll booth miles away, the attendant locked eyes with me, turned pale, and muttered, "You weren't supposed to step in there." I don't know how he knew, but that gave me chills to the core. Since then, things began to disappear from the booth, my cross from the rearview mirror, the scapular from the dashboard, even my wallet once. And in their place, something strange always appeared. A braided twig, a black stone, or a few strands of hair tied with red thread. The nightmares started almost at the same time. Always the same scenario. I was stuck on Route 22, with no headlights, no way out, and the figure walking beside me, outside, following the truck step by step. I woke up sweating, with my arms numb, as if someone had been holding them tightly all night. One day, I woke up with thin marks on my wrists. Like scratches, or claws. I showed them to a fellow driver, who immediately said it was a messed up dispatch thing. That I had broken something I shouldn't have and now I was carrying it around with me. He told me to get help. But how do you explain that without sounding crazy? A priest at a roadside stop heard me. He asked me to bless the truck. In the middle of the prayer, the radio turned on by itself and played a slow, repetitive folk song in Spanish, like an old lullaby. The priest stopped, looked at me and said, "This doesn't want to go away." Since then, I've started to notice more presences. Sometimes, mirrors break for no reason. Other times, the windows in the cabin fog up on the inside, even though no one is breathing there. But worst of all, the road starts to repeat itself. Sometimes, I'll drive for miles and realize that I've already passed the same gas station, the same fallen tree, the same dead dog on the side of the road. It's as if Route 22 were extending. As if, by stepping into that circle, I had been pulled into something. A territory that doesn't belong to the ordinary world. And no matter how much I drive, sooner or later, I end up back at that point. I've tried taking another route, using a different GPS, even changing trucks. Nothing changes. I always come back. And the circle is there. Always aligned, always clean, always waiting. With that smell of rot in the air and the figure lurking. Just waiting for me to make a mistake again. Or, accept it. I've thought about stopping. Leaving the truck, starting a new life somewhere far away. But the truth is that the road won't let me go anymore. Every route seems to take me back to 22. Even when I don't want to, when I plan a completely different route, I end up passing by there. As if it were part of me now. And the most sinister thing, the last few times, the salt circle wasn't just on the asphalt. It appeared on the ground of the yard where I parked at night. Once, I found one of them on the wall of a truck stop, made with soot. Identical. Perfect. Always following me. One day, I stopped in the middle of the road, tired and defeated. I got out of the truck and stared straight at the circle. I said out loud, "What do you want?" And at that moment, the wind stopped. The silence became so thick that I could hear my heart beating. And then, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, dragging. I didn't have the courage to look. I felt a warm breath on my neck. And a low, deep voice, almost a whisper, "You already know." I ran, got in the truck and left like crazy. But since then, even on the quietest nights, I hear that phrase repeated in the hiss of the radio, in the echo of the engine, in the sound of the wind hitting the bodywork. People say that evil only affects those who believe. I didn't believe. I wasn't religious or superstitious. Now I just wanted to stop. But there's no way to erase what I saw, what I stepped on, what I heard. There's something on that road that doesn't want to be ignored. Something that demands attention, reverence. As if every trucker who crosses that point is tested. And whoever makes a mistake will carry that with them forever. Like me. I made a mistake. I stepped where I shouldn't have. I was too curious. And now, there's no going back. You just have to keep going. Because stopping is accepting. So if you ever drive down Route 22 and see tangled branches, salt on the ground, or smell the strong smell of wet earth, don't get off. Don't step on it. And for the love of all things, never look at the figure standing on the side of the road. Because if they smile at you, it's too late. It was supposed to be a quiet night. I had left Amarillo and was heading toward Oklahoma City, with little traffic on the highway and clear skies. Around 3 in the morning, I saw something that made me slow down. A woman was standing on the shoulder of the road. She was wearing a long black dress, her hair down, her head down. She looked like she was crying. I hesitated, but then I slowed down and pulled over. It was automatic. You don't leave someone alone on the highway at that hour. I got out of the truck with my flashlight on, approaching slowly, not knowing whether to call out to her or just wait for her to notice me. When I got closer, I saw that she was shaking. Her shoulders were shaking in silent tears. I asked her if she was okay, if she needed help, but she didn't answer. She just slowly raised her head. And looked at me. Her face was pale, her eyes red and sunken, as if she hadn't slept in days. Then she spoke, in a low, slurred voice, as if she were remembering something distant. "You look like him." At the time, I didn't understand. I opened my mouth to ask who him was, but before I could say anything, I felt a sharp crack in the air, as if time had stopped. And then, everything went black. I woke up in the back of the truck. Sweaty, out of breath, as if I had been running for hours. The clock on the dashboard read 6:13, but I remembered stopping at 3 o'clock. I looked around. The woman was gone. No sign of her on the side of the road. No cars around. Just my truck, parked, the engine still running. But something was wrong. My arms were scratched, as if someone had scraped them hard with their nails. And on the driver's side window, there was a mark. Like a kiss. Smeared dark red. Only it didn't look like lipstick. It smelled like rust. Like dried blood. I got back on the road confused, not understanding what had happened. I tried to rationalize, maybe I had fainted, dreamed, hallucinated. But then, at the end of the week, I met another truck driver at a gas station. We started chatting, and he mentioned a widow that appears in that region. A woman who cries on the road and attracts drivers. He said that a friend of his had stopped to help and was never seen again. The last location that appeared on the guy's GPS was exactly the same spot where I had stopped. I showed him the mark on the window. The guy turned pale immediately and left without saying anything else. That's when I understood, I had met the widow of the asphalt. And she hadn't chosen me by chance. After that day, I started to notice little changes in my routine. The rearview mirror in the cabin would fog up on the inside, even in the cold air. The radio would turn itself off every time I drove down isolated roads. And some nights, I swore I could hear crying coming from outside, even with the windows closed. The sound was distant, but it got louder as I slowed down. As if she knew when I was thinking about stopping. And worse, sometimes, the sound would come from inside the cabin. I'd even stop on the shoulder of the road and search everything with a flashlight, convinced that someone had gotten in. But I never found anything. Just the smell. That metallic smell, of something old, dead. One morning, I stopped to sleep at an empty gas station. I dreamed about her. It wasn't an ordinary dream. It was vivid, as if I were on the road again. She was outside the truck, crying, and saying the name of someone I had never heard before, David. She repeated it over and over, between sobs and screams. When I woke up, the truck's radio was on, even though I remembered turning it off. And on the passenger seat, there was a long, black lock of hair. I live alone, I don't let anyone get in my truck. I put it in a plastic bag and threw it away, but 2 days later, I found another one, in the same place. I started doing some research on my own. I found an old newspaper archive from 1983. It talked about an accident involving a couple on the highway I usually drive on. The truck lost control and overturned, killing the man. The woman survived for hours, trapped in the wreckage, and died before help arrived. No one could explain why it took so long. They say the emergency calls never reached the dispatch center. His name? David. The same one from the dream. And her picture, in the yellowed newspaper, was the same as the woman I saw on the road. Same face, same hair, same dark clothes. Since then, the connection has become more intense. Sometimes, I see her reflection in the mirror when I pass over overpasses or metal signs. Other times, I hear the truck door unlock by itself. I've woken up with the passenger door wide open, even though I locked everything. It's as if she could get in whenever she wanted. As if the truck was hers now too. I've tried changing routes, taking other roads. It's no use. Whenever I pass a less crowded spot, she appears. Sometimes standing, sometimes sitting. Always crying. Always looking straight at me. As if she was waiting for something. As if she knew that, sooner or later, I would stop again. And this time, not wake up. One night it almost happened. I was exhausted, coming back from a long delivery, and I saw her there again, on the side of the road. This time she was kneeling, as if in mourning, with her hands on her face. I drove past, but the rearview mirror showed her getting up. Alone. Looking at me. Later, I stopped at a gas station and went to the bathroom. When I came back, the cabin smelled of dried blood again. And the radio was playing a recording of my voice, but I don't remember ever saying it, "You sound like him." The phrase she said herself. That stopped me. The truck was turned off. No power. But the recording kept going. How? From then on, I began to realize that it wasn't just an apparition. She was trapped. And looking for someone. I don't know why, but she associated me with this David guy. Maybe because of my face. Maybe out of desperation. And every time I hear that cry, every time I stop, it's as if she gets stronger. More present. As if part of her was already inside my truck. Or inside me. I've tried burning the seats, changing the curtains, even leaving the truck at the mechanic's for weeks. Nothing changes. Every time I get back on the road, she's there. Somewhere. Waiting for me. I started having lapses. Gaps in my memory. Days I don't remember driving. Stretches of road that seem erased. On one of my last trips, I got a call on the CB radio from a male voice saying, "You've been gone for 3 days, too." I didn't recognize the voice. But when I looked at my watch, it said the same time as the day I first saw her. 3 in the morning. And for a moment, I saw my reflection in the mirror, but something was different. The face was mine. But the eyes, they didn't seem to belong to me. As if I had come back, but a part of her had stayed with me. Or worse, I had taken something of her with me. So, if one day you are on the road and see a woman crying on the side of the road, don't stop. Don't try to console her. Because she is not alone. She carries the weight of an absence that will never be filled. And if she looks at you, if she says you look like someone else, run. Because if you stop, you might wake up days later. Or you might never wake up again. I almost turned down this load. It was old lumber, taken from a demolition site on a remote farm near Baton Rouge. The guy who hired me seemed nervous, like he wanted to get rid of it fast. He said he could just haul it to a warehouse in Arkansas. No stops. No questions asked. The lumber was stacked, tied, and covered with heavy tarps. But even with everything sealed up, the smell was strong. Damp wood mixed with mold and something that reminded me of old iron, or old blood. It wasn't normal. But the pay was good, and I needed it. The first night, I could already tell something was wrong. I was driving along the interstate, without much traffic, when I heard the first sound. It was like something was scratching the inside of the truck. I thought it was the wood coming loose, or something. I pulled over at a gas station and checked the lashings. Everything was secure. But when I climbed into the back, the canvas was shaking, as if there was wind inside. And there was no wind outside. I pretended it was paranoia and kept going. But the sound came back. Dry knocks. Fingernails scratching metal. And at certain moments, whispers. Low, indecipherable. They seemed to be coming from inside the wood. I stopped again, nervous now, and decided to open a crack in the canvas. The smell was even worse there. As if something was rotting. I shined my flashlight and saw that part of the wood was scratched. It wasn't a crack, it was marks. Fingernails. As if someone had tried to get out of there. There were also symbols carved into it, like marks made by a knife or something sharp. One of them was a kind of circle with 3 points facing inward. I wrote it down to look it up later. I closed everything and accelerated as much as I could. The road seemed longer that night. And the sound, more insistent. The next morning, I couldn't sleep. I parked on a secluded shoulder, closed everything, and tried to rest. And that's when the knocks got louder. 3 knocks. Always 3. Rhythmic. Like a call. I jumped up in fright, grabbed the flashlight, and went to the back. When I opened the door, nothing. But the marks were there. Fingernails scratching the wood from the inside out. Some were fresh, with splinters still loose. And right in the middle, with the dust scratched, someone, or something, had written, "Return." I walked back to the truck, my hands shaking. I turned on the radio to try to drown out the silence, but it just crackled, as if no station was picking up. The screen would flicker sporadically, and for a few seconds, jumbled words, or names, would appear. One of them kept repeating itself, Mallory. I don't know anyone with that name. But it kept coming. At 3 in the morning, the knocking came back. This time it was louder, and the sound sounded like sobs. Like someone was crying inside the truck. And between the sounds, I could hear something being dragged. Like wood scraping against wood. The next morning, I decided to investigate. I stopped at a secluded rest stop and walked over to the cargo area. I lifted the tarp completely. The wood was sweating. Literally. Dark drops were running down the boards. Some had fresh cracks, with darker, almost black interiors. I touched one of them. I felt a strange heat. As if the wood were alive, pulsating. I took out my cell phone and took a picture, but it came out completely black. As if the camera refused to record it. On one of the pieces, there was a handprint. Small. Childish. Engraved as if it had been pressed hard. I decided to do some more research on the farm where the wood was taken from. With some effort, I found an old article. It talked about a massacre in the 1970s. A man went crazy, locked his family in the house and set everything on fire. But before that, according to the newspaper, he sealed the rooms with symbols carved into the wooden walls. The same symbols I saw on the cargo. They said he spoke to voices coming from the house. That he could hear his children even after they died. And the strangest thing, the only survivor of the tragedy was called Mallory. She was 8 years old. She disappeared the day after the fire. She was never seen again. The connection was clear. I was carrying the remains of it. Not just wood, but what was stuck to it. I started having dreams. Always the same ones. Me inside a dark wooden house, with locked doors and children's voices coming from the floor. One of them kept repeating, "It's dark in here. Let me go." I woke up feeling like someone had been watching me all night. And worse, my body was covered in scratches. Thin stripes, on my back, on my arms. As if little nails had touched me. I started to fear sleeping. Because every nap seemed to pull me inside those walls. Inside that burden. I decided to finish the delivery as quickly as possible. I sped up, stopped as little as possible, and didn't look at the cargo anymore. But even so, the knocking continued. Sometimes during the day, low, rhythmic. As if something inside knew I was ignoring it. The last night before arriving at the warehouse, I had the worst nightmare. I was trapped inside the truck bed, surrounded by wood. Every board had a face, and they were all looking at me. They were crying. They were screaming. And Mallory whispered in my ear, "Now it's your turn." I woke up screaming. And the most disturbing detail? I was no longer in the bed of the truck. I was sitting in the back, leaning against the cargo. Barefoot. And with sawdust on my feet. When I finally arrived at my destination, I went to unload, but no one showed up. The warehouse was empty, abandoned. The gate was open, and there was absolute silence. I tried calling the number on the contract, but it only said out of range. I decided to leave everything there. I unlocked the doors and walked down the wooden ramp. When I climbed into the truck bed for the last time, the sunlight hit the interior walls, and I saw it. Fingernail marks now formed a name. Mallory. Repeated dozens of times. As if she were trying to get out. Or get in. I ran out, locked everything, left the truck running, and took a taxi. I abandoned the vehicle there. I never went back to get it. I tried to move on with my life with a different truck, a different state, a different name on the badge. But sometimes, I still hear the noise. 3 knocks. Coming from the closet in my house. From the trunk of my car. From the wall in my living room. As if the cargo was still with me. I've sought help, I've tried every kind of rational explanation. But whatever was in that wood, it wasn't just memory. It was presence. And I let it go. So, if you are ever offered a load that is too old, wood from an abandoned house, full of strange marks and symbols, refuse. Even if they pay well. Because there are things that were made to never be touched again. And there are voices that, once released, never shut up again.